Now we want to create a function that returns something. So let's think about one example of a function that would return something, about an example that we would need to use this. For example, I want to send a MIDI note here when I press my button. So MIDI dot send note. And then I will send the note, whatever, then in the velocity 127 and channel 1. But in this world that I live now, I don't know the MIDI values, or I don't want to use MIDI values, I want to use the frequency of the note. So for example, the MIDI note 69 is a A440. So it's our famous A440. And for example, the frequency 220 is that A one octave below. So in a world that we just have the frequencies, how can I use a frequency here instead of a MIDI note? What if I had a formula that could transform MIDI notes, or what if I had a formula that transformed frequency into MIDI notes? Luckily, we can find this on the internet. So the formula actually is this. And I will just copy and you will understand, kinda at least. So looking on the internet, I can find the formula for transforming frequency into MIDI notes, and I also can find MIDI note to frequency. And in this case, for example, the formula is this: log of the frequency divided by 440 divided by log of 2 times 12 plus 69. You don't really need to understand what is happening here. If you want to understand a little bit why is 440 and why is 69, it's just because you are adjusting the formula to the 440 tuning, because 69 is 440. So you could use a different note here with its frequency here. But let's think about how do we write a function that returns something. In this case, I want to create a function that will return an integer number, the MIDI note that I will use. So here, instead of void, you're gonna put int in the beginning of the function. Then you're gonna write the name of the function, in this case freqToMidi, and then the arguments that this function takes. In this example, the function takes one argument, which is the frequency, which will be changed in this variable. So everything that you put here, or everything that you put in the argument of this function, will be substituted by this f here. Okay, so we calculated this function, this math function, and we stored in this variable MIDI_vol. Then we need to return this MIDI value, because it's the one value that we want to use in this function. So we just write return MIDI_vol. Okay, so the one value that's going to be returned in this function is just the one that you will put after return. So how do we use this function? Here, when I want to send my note, when I want to transform a frequency to a MIDI note, I will type the name of the function, and the argument. In this example, let's see, the frequency 200. So we can't use a void function in the place of a number, in the place of a variable. But we can and we need to use functions that return something in the place of a number. So here, if I want to use one number that's going to be calculated in a function, we will use a function that, say, begins with an int, for example. So let's use different frequencies here, like 200 and then 440 and then 800. Okay, let's put a delay of 500 milliseconds and then the note off for the same thing. Actually, let's change this. Nope. Okay. Okay, then let's change the value. So in this case, maybe we will have a float, a decimal number, but because we just want an integer here, this will, what we call, it will truncate into an integer. It will round this decimal number to the next big integer. Okay? So let's see what is going to happen. So here sending note 55 if I choose frequency 200. Here is sending the frequency 400, is sending the note 67. And here sending note 79 in frequency 800. Here I put one delay more, that's why it was different. So let's try it again. So this is frequency 200, adapted to MIDI, frequency 400, that's 67, and then frequency 800, which is note 79. Okay, so this is one example of a function that returns something used in a MIDI context. So sometimes you need to realize a function that you don't know exactly how you do it. Then you can look on the internet and maybe you will find. And then just like this, I found on the internet how to convert frequency to MIDI. So I just adapted to a C code. And then I just returned one value. Then we can just use this value just like we did here. So that's it for functions that return something.